Good day, guys. Today we start talking about still Module 2, Microeconomics. Topic 3, Price Elasticity. Here we're going to look at price elasticity of demand and supply. Right, in this topic specifically, we're going to look at marginal utility. Remember, marginal, the word means additional or extra. Price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply, those can be possible essay questions. Factors determining the elasticity of demand, that's normally paragraph question. Income elasticity of demand and cross elasticity of demand. That can also be additional part of an essay question or paragraph question. Just a little bit of background. When you think of elasticity, something is elastic, or you're talking about an elastic. You think of an elastic band. It can stretch and it can shrink, and it is responsive. In other words, when something happens in the market, it's going to respond to it. Here we look at price and demand. Price and demand are the two variables we look at when determining price elasticity. So the two variables we look at is price and demand. The difference between dependent variables and independent variables. Easy. Dependent, you still depend like on your parents. Independent, you don't depend on them, you depend on yourself. So dependent means it's a variable which is affected by some other variable in the model. So it's still depending on other variables. Independent is a variable that affects some other variable in a model. So in other words, an independent variable can influence another variable in a model, but it stands on its own. It's independent. It does not depend on other variables. In fact, it actually can control them. Elasticity, the definition, make sure you know this, is the percentage change in a dependent variable if the independent variable changes by only 1%. So the definition of elasticity. Our formula will be E. E stands for elasticity. Remember, elasticity means the responsiveness to something. Equals the percentage, and whenever we see a triangle, it means change. Alright, so change means difference. So the percentage change in Y divided by the percentage change in X. Marginal utility. Again, a couple of definitions you need to know. Utility is the power something has to satisfy a want. Marginal utility is subjective feeling or satisfaction gained by consuming. Remember, I said marginal means additional. So consuming one additional or the last unit. So make sure you know these definitions. They are very important. At marginal utility, you'll also see the more you consume of a product, the less satisfaction you will get from it. So imagine eating now after lockdown for the first time again, Burger King or McDonald's burger, and you eat the first burger. It's going to give you a lot of satisfaction. You're going to enjoy it. But let's say you try to eat 6 burgers, then you're going to get to a point where you're going to have disutility, where you're going to feel sick and you want to vomit because you have eaten too much. Okay, so that is the law of diminishing marginal utility, which we will still look at. Consumers choose between various goods and services. How do consumers choose what to buy or what to do? They determine the value associated with the action or the good. Utility can also be negative. We call it disutility. For example, right, if you did something your parents said you are not allowed to do, some still give a good old spanking, that is disutility. Okay, meaning in other words, you don't get any positive utility from it. You don't experience anything positive from it. Obviously, it's going to hurt, and it is not going to be a nice experience when you get a hiding. Okay. Or nowadays, when you get your cell phone being taken away from you, any form of punishment is known as disutility. Diminishing marginal utility, utility or satisfaction is explicitly, make sure you know this, measured in utils. Okay, how do we measure marginal utility or utility? We measure it in utils. Total utility refers to all the satisfaction gained from the consumption of a given quantity of economic goods. Average utility is the average satisfaction per unit gained from the consumption of those goods. It can be found by dividing total utility by the number of goods consumed. Okay, for example, number consumed, let's say we talk about burgers now. So 1 to 8 burgers, there's my total utility. Average utility over here, I'm going to calculate by saying my total utility divided by the number consumed. For example, 20 divided by 1 equals to 20. My 38 divided by 2 equals to 19. Marginal utility, remember, looks again at the additional unit every time. So I'm going to take the difference here between my number consumed here, number 2, minus the previous one. So 38 minus 20 is going to give me 18. 54 minus 38 is going to give me 16. 68 minus 54 is going to give me 14. And you just follow the pattern like that to get your marginal utility. You'll also see that it can be a negative amount, all right, meaning that is your disutility. That is where you eat so many hamburgers, 8 hamburgers, where you are actually sick, okay, or you drink too much and then you actually have to go to hospital because you have alcohol poisoning, for example. All right, many examples we can use there, but it just shows us when we consume too much of something that we like, it actually gives us this utility. It does not give us a positive utility anymore. Right, the law of diminishing marginal utility, or the law of Gaussen. Gaussen is the economist behind this theory, states that marginal utility declines or decreases as the number of goods consumed increases. In figure 3.2, the marginal utility curve is a downward sloping curve. Downward sloping meaning it starts at the top and it slopes downwards. This means that utility has a negative relationship between quantity and utility, meaning as quantity consumed increases, so from 1 burger I go up to 8 burgers, utility, the power something has to satisfy a want, will start to decrease, because when I get to my 8th burger, I'm not going to be satisfied with the burgers anymore. I'm actually going to be sick of these burgers. We can also say that MU, marginal utility, is equals to the change in total utility. Remember, triangle represents always a change. Change means subtraction. Okay, so like I showed you in the table, when you, for example, take number 2 minus number 1, and then number 3 minus number 2, and number 4 minus number 3, that is where you get the change of total utility in order to calculate the marginal utility, the additional unit that's consumed. The vertical distance between the x-axis and the marginal utility curve gives the marginal utility at that specific quantity. Okay, so vertical distance here from U to U1. They say the vertical distance between the x-axis and the marginal utility curve gives the marginal utility at that specific quantity. Right, so it actually is just going to show us in the end what happens if I consume more. When I consume more, my satisfaction is going to be less. It's going to decrease. And you see that your curve actually goes below your horizontal axis, meaning that it has a negative utility. What do we call that negative utility again? Disutility. Okay, because when I consume too much of something that's normally very nice to me, I am not going to enjoy it that much anymore. The area below the MU curve, MU, marginal utility, shown by Q and U, is the total utility. So the area below the MU curve, this is my MU curve, shown by Q, there's Q, and U is the total utility. So this area over here, total utility of what I'm consuming. And the more that I'm consuming, right, more that I'm consuming, the less my marginal utility will become. Therefore, when Q units are consumed, marginal utility is U. Total utility is, here they tell me 0, U, A, and Q. Remember, we always work on the outer corners. 0, U, A, Q. Right, so that's my total utility. When the marginal utility curve is below the x-axis, marginal utility can still take place, but remember it's disutility. It's a negative utility that takes place there. Consumer equilibrium. This is a state of stability in the consumer purchasing patterns in which the individual has maximized his or her total utility, or when the marginal utilities of the products produced or purchased are equal. This means if a consumer is purchasing hot dogs and cool drinks, consumer equilibrium has been reached once both items provide the same amount of satisfaction or marginal utility. So you might eat 2 hot dogs but only drink 1 can of Coke, and then it might give you the same satisfaction. Then it means that we have reached the marginal utility. Okay, price elasticity of demand that we're going to look at for tomorrow, very important. You need to know the definition here. This is a possible essay. You're going to see here we're going to do 5 different graphs that you are going to summarize for me after this. All I want you to do is that first section that we did today is just summarize for me all your definitions: marginal utility, total utility, utils, all those little definitions and important little words, concepts that we went through today. Please summarize it for me in your red book because it's important for your final exam. Okay, guys, see you tomorrow.